Good afternoon, and welcome to the United Methodist Foundation of Louisiana's webinar on end of year giving in a messed up year. I'm Rob Fairley. I'll be your host today as we talk about a really important topic, that is giving and generosity in your churches. And this is the time of year that's most important when we're doing that effort. So let's just jump right in and start covering the information. Charitable giving, the good news about charitable giving is that last year, 2019, was the best year, actually the second best year in recorded history for giving. Individual donors were the ones who were most participating in that effort. Now, individual donors, that's in comparison to foundations or corporations. They were the biggest piece of the pie. That's good news for us because individual donors are the people that are sitting in our pews, and they were the most generous of the givers. More good news, this year, despite a worldwide pandemic and all the unemployment and other challenges we've been facing, the first 6 months of 2020 are even better than the first 6 months of 2019 were. All good news. There was a concern right after the tax law changes that the higher standard deductions, when they changed the standard deduction up to over $20,000, would hurt giving. That has not proven to be the case. Let's look at some statistics. In every area that you consider, people who gave money from $1 to $250, that giving was up 19%. You can see as we go down the list, larger gifts, 250 to almost 1,000, was up 8%. Above that, they were still up over 6%. The number of donors, people who actually would give, that number increased. And the number of new donors participating was the second highest of all these increases. Good news, 19 was great, 20 is looking better than 19, and that's across all the categories. Now, the reason this is so important is that year-end giving is really a big deal. A third of all the charitable contributions to all nonprofits come in December. A third of the entire year's giving comes in that final month. 10% of annual giving is actually even concentrated in the very last 3 days of the year. This is the time that we need to be talking to people about generosity. Half of all the nonprofit organizations receive a majority of the annual donations. That's another way of saying this. This final quarter is really important. We are a nonprofit organization, so this is an important time for us as well. Generally, in the church, we conduct our pledge campaigns during this time of the year. It's because when all the crops come in and we're all still farmers. We still do follow that tradition. And your people are therefore used to this conversation at this time of year, and they're expecting an opportunity to make a gift. So why would this year be any different? Individuals are already ahead of last year. Last year was great. So ask yourself, what could the potential be for my church if we just will ask? Now, there are some things in the tax law that are going to help us as well. In the past, if you were making a cash gift, you were not able to deduct 100%, an amount that was equal to 100% of your adjusted gross income. It was limited to 60%. So if you had a person that made $50,000 a year, adjusted gross, and for some reason they sold a piece of land, real estate, stocks, whatever generated a windfall, and they wanted to make a large gift to your church, they could give $50,000, an amount equal to their adjusted gross income, but they could not deduct all of it in that first year. They had to carry it forward. This has changed for this year. Don't know if it'll be different in the future or not. At this point, it's just 2020. What does that mean? It means if that same generous person had some sort of windfall, was able to make a large, unusually perhaps generous gift to your church, $50,000 when their adjusted gross income was $50,000, he could apply it all. In other words, he could wipe out the taxable income for the year. Obviously, with bigger numbers, well, the numbers are just better still. The second thing that is a little bit different this year, and this should help everybody, whether or not they are large donors, small donors, whatever their capacity may be, is you can take the standard deduction, the new standard higher deduction, and you can still receive a deduction for $300 per person or per filing unit above and beyond that standard deduction. Normally, we used to the idea of either taking the standard or itemizing. What we're saying here is you can take the standard and itemize an additional $300. There's really no reason why everybody in your church would therefore not have some interest in making this type of gift. $300 is not going to be crippling, I think, financially to anybody, and they will all receive a benefit. Everybody's supposed to file taxes, and they can receive this additional deduction. There are some other changes as well. There's an impact on retirement accounts for 2020. Required minimum distributions are something that federal law dictates. So years ago, when they established these pre-tax contribution retirement plans, the concept was to encourage individuals to set aside money for their retirement. In order to keep them from just putting this money away forever and never using it, there was kind of a cutoff period. They said at a certain date, you had to start taking it out. The calculation is one that would have all the money that you've set aside be dispersed if you live to your normal retirement age. So they might take whatever the balance is in that account and divide it by whatever your longevity looked like it would be, 25 years or 27.3 years or whatever it might be. And that gives you a number that is the required minimum distribution. This year, they made an exception and said you actually don't have to do that if you'd prefer to keep the funds in your IRAs. So that doesn't mean that'll be a gift for your church, but it's a piece of information that might be important to your people. For some, keeping the money in their retirement plans, IRAs, will be good, as this market has been steadily, slowly, but steadily increasing in value. It might be the best option for them. For others, making charitable gifts directly from the IRAs might be preferable. So let's talk about that. Individuals age 70 and a half and older can continue to make this IRA rollover gift. That's a gift that is direct from their eligible IRAs to a qualified nonprofit. Now, donors can avoid being pushed into the higher income tax bracket, and it prevents phase outs of some of the other tax deductions. I mean, those are the reasons why they'd want to, other than number one, wanting to support your ministry or its efforts financially. When they do that, if they use their IRA distributions, and it can be an amount less than your RMD or equal to your RMD. The maximum for an individual is $100,000. A couple could give therefore 2 times 100 or $200,000. Now, another good point about emphasizing generosity at this time of year is it's just the season. The year-end holiday season puts people in a more generous mood. Holidays, that stretch from now, certainly from Thanksgiving until New Year's, is a constant reminder that all of us ought to be thankful and perhaps give back when we're able to do so. This holiday spirit tends to make audiences, I think, more receptive to appeals for support, especially when you use effective storytelling. You want to illustrate your mission. You want to tell them why they should be interested in supporting that, and use your storytelling to use emotion to generate their response. The end of the year also represents the last chance for donors to make any kind of tax deductible gift. So while I don't think that's the primary reason people give, it is a driver of charitable giving in the last days of the year. Now, the next question would be, is your church ready? How can you take advantage of this? Well, we need to let our members know that we do accept year-end gifts. More importantly, we probably need to show them how to do it. How do you invite people to make this gift? Well, if you have any type of year-end programs, and I realize this year that's probably going to look different, but it's a great time to promote that opportunity. You can invite your members to make it happen through their year-end gifts, whatever cause it is you're trying to celebrate. You might use a phrase like, we can bring this ministry to bear because of your financial gifts, so please consider this extra $300 gift or whatever you might be referring to. You might just ask them, if you find yourself unusually blessed in this complicated year, perhaps you've kept your job. Perhaps your job usually had expenses that you did not incur this year because of all this virus mess. You can be a powerful source of ministry to others as we continue to be the church through the community. Consider a year-end gift. You can use a series of blurbs throughout your different methods of communication to continue this effort. So how do you do that? Well, whenever you preach, if you preach a sermon, work it into the sermon. Your worship bulletin, every one of them, if you're worshiping in person, ought to have some reference to these year-end gifts. Offertory prayers, they don't all have to come from the book of worship. You can actually make a few of these things up and have them key to the specific time of the year and the needs you might have. Are you sending out a newsletter? Hopefully you're sending out quarterly statements. Still, the old-fashioned idea of storytelling or testimonies are useful. Any kind of special offerings, all of these are opportunities for you to preach or teach and encourage this generosity. So how do you communicate this way? Well, you can email, and you can do it more than once. Still, direct mail works. Any type of social media that you might have. Do you Facebook or whichever other Twitter or tweet or whatever you might do? Blogs, websites. Do you have an e-newsletter you send out? Whatever particular thing you do, and hopefully you do more than one, use all of those to communicate what we're talking about. You want to get your message out any way you can. So how do you do it? Show them how to do it and make it easy. There's an expectation, particularly in today's world where things are so virtual, that everything's going to be easy and it's going to be laid right out for us. So do that for everybody. Consider how your church can provide the answer to any of the questions that might pop up. The example I have here, the orange thing, is something that comes from the church I attend, First Methodist in Baton Rouge. We have not gone personally to worship there. We're still worshiping virtually, my wife and I, although the church is open, they're beginning to have some people there. But during the service, the virtual service that we have, there's never a Sunday that this is not shown. And what it shows is, or reminds people, and actually the pastor works his way through this and reminds the details, that you can go to the website of the church and make a gift. Hit one of those give buttons, or you can text a gift, or of course you can still mail your check. So do not hesitate to completely remind folks of these various methods. People of different generations respond differently to the different methods. Now, the checker box on the right, most of you will know, is a QR code. Don't check this one because I don't even know where we got it. So it might start a subscription to Sports Illustrated for all I know. But some churches have QR codes, and you can use that as well. So what can you give? It's a good time of the year to remind people what they can give. Gifts of cash, remember we discussed that already because of the tax law changes. People can get even more tax benefit from using cash than they've been able to do in the past. Appreciated securities, that's one of those things where you can get more bang for your buck. You bought Exxon or IBM, and I haven't checked those prices today, but if you bought it at 100 10 years ago, and today it's trading at 200, you could sell it. You would owe the taxes on the appreciation, the difference between what you paid for it, 100, and what you sold it for today, 200. You'd have to pay taxes on that, and I guess whatever you had left over, you could give to the church. Or you can give the stock directly to the church, and you get the deduction value of its current value, not its cost basis. So you actually get a larger deduction than what it initially cost you. Real estate is very similar. When you give real estate, it too is a gift valued on its current value, not its cost basis. Now, it does take a little while to do that. It's a little more complicated. Foundation is here to help you do it if you have any questions. It also is useful for those people who might own a rental house or two or 100. Over time, one of the advantages of having rental property is that you can depreciate the value of the property. Now, Uncle Sam doesn't forget. And so when you go to sell that property, you've gotten that tax advantage of depreciation, and he makes you take that into consideration and pay taxes on it. They call that recapture of depreciation. But if you give a piece of property that you fully depreciated, the deduction value is the value at which it is today, its current sales value. you avoid that recapture question. Retirement assets. Well, once again, Uncle Sam never forgets. So if you have any pre-tax retirement plan, IRA, 401k, 403b, SEP, whatever it may be, you used money that you had not paid taxes on and set it aside for your retirement. When it comes back out, whether you take it out, your spouse takes it out, or your heirs take it out, they will pay taxes on it, except when you use an IRA rollover. This does not apply to the other different programs that you have for retirement, but with an IRA, several years ago, they began allowing, now it's permanent law, that you can roll over up to $100,000 per person if you give it directly to the nonprofit. Some of you churches are already beginning to utilize that as we've worked with them in the last several years. So a couple could be $200,000. The advantage is it is not recognized as taxable income, so it lowers your potential tax bracket, and you still honor your pledge to the church. Gifts of insurance. Now, sometimes people have an insurance policy, well, the need is no longer valid. So they bought an insurance policy when their children were born so that something happened to them, it would be enough money to send the child to college. Now the child has graduated from college, gotten married, has children of their own. Obviously that college need is no longer there. You can give that policy to the church. The value of the policy can then accrue to the church. They can sell it. There are a variety of things they can do with it. There's a deduction value. So all of these are different types of assets that people can give to support the church. You might need to remind everybody of these things. Foundation is here to help with any kind of questions for you or for your donors. Then I want to impress you with the appreciation of securities. I say that because the market is up right now. And actually the market has been up now for several years. The one thing we know is that it will fluctuate. But right now there are a lot of appreciated securities. People do own IBM or Exxon or the various corporate stocks. And many of them, if not most of them, are higher in value than they were a few years ago. Obviously, it depends on the individual situation. But encourage that. This is a time where at the end of the year, perhaps the job has been affected. They may not have a whole lot of excess income, but they do have some appreciated assets, such as stock. If somebody takes $100 worth of stock that is paying 3% dividend, they will be giving up $3 in income to make a $100 gift. Now, if that doesn't make sense, what we're saying is they get a pretty big bang for their buck. They're not paying taxes on this appreciation, and they're really not giving up very much for future income. Now, there are some ways that you should consider to always retain your donors. You know, it's tough to get. If you're like most Methodist churches, you don't have a large percentage of your congregation that are giving regularly. So there's lots of room for improvement. Now, there's some ways to retain them and encourage them. One is you need to send out a thank you letter. It needs to be a thoughtful, well thought out letter, not a form letter of some sort. And it needs to go out right away. The next day is terrific, but certainly within 48 hours. So what happens when you do that? Well, you increase probably the amount that they're going to give in the future because they realize you really are grateful for it. For that matter, you'll increase the likelihood of them giving again. One of the battles that nonprofits fight is retaining donors. So it's something they certainly want to do. Tell them why their gift was just the right thing for whatever your need was. Tell them how it made you feel. Pastors, if you don't realize this, all us lay people sitting out there, if we're bothering to come sit in front of you on a Sunday or tune in on a Sunday, we're dedicating that time to listen to what you have to say. It indicates that we value you and your opinion. And what kind of impact does that have on us when we get a little handwritten thank you note? May have 3 or 4 sentences, doesn't have to be an epistle, just a brief thing that says it was really important to you. It made you feel grateful, and you, the donor, helped someone else by making this gift. Don't feel like you just write one thank you note and forget about it. A donor's joy for making a gift goes away pretty quickly. So you can continue to thank them over time. As you thank them and they realize you really are paying attention and you really do appreciate it, you'll repeat the thanks, they'll repeat the gift. Look, online gifts need thank yous too. Just because they used a text or went to the website or however they did it, a QR code, it doesn't mean you shouldn't thank them. And just a static, automatic thank you for your online gift is probably better than nothing, but just barely. Online donors deserve thanking as well. They too react very well to a personal note. So they make a gift, they text a gift, and by golly, within a couple days, the pastor that was on that screen when they were watching sends them a note that says, this really meant a lot. You helped some people. We fed some people or found housing for the homeless or whatever. Do you think that'll register with them? I guarantee it will. And of course, the phone calls are the most immediate. You get a gift and you call them. And how many times has that happened to you? Think about it. Virtually never. Do you think it would make an impact? Huge impact. You can segment your givers. You could start with major gifts. If you just are way too busy to say thank you to people, and shame on you if you feel that way. But if you're just all that busy, then segment your givers. And the ones who make these major gifts, whether it's in dollar size or just based on their capacity to give, pick up the phone and give them a call. I mean, that's relationship building. How about the people who are giving a gift for the very first time, or people who have increased their gifts and so on? You can break it down and you can use that as part of the key for your thank you. Look, I know this was the first time you gave us a gift. You don't know how much that means to us. You don't know how many people that's going to help. Then there are a few things you can do to really hurt yourself. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but if you want to know some things to kill your year-end giving effort, here are 7 of them. Make your ask letter hard to read. Use small type, long sentences, not much white space, long paragraphs. People get bored and quit reading them long before they finish. So do the opposite of that. Make the letter all about you and not about the donor. That does not warm their hearts. Let them know that they are thoughtful, they're special for considering a gift. They're generous, they're full of faith. Make the letter about the donor. Hide the ask deep inside a paragraph. So you write this letter, long or short, it's wordy in this paragraph, and somewhere in there you think you asked them to make a gift. Don't do that. Make a standalone sentence so they see immediately what it is. Do not be embarrassed. This is something that the Bible speaks to. This is something that all of us attending church expect. So make it easy for them to see the ask. If you don't update your website, you're shooting yourself in your foot. So make it easy to give online where they don't have to hunt for that give button, and it's coordinated with the other things you're doing. If you only send one end of your communication, they could just miss it. It could go to their junk box. They could forget to pick up their mail. You've got to send more than one. Follow-up ask can increase, according to the studies, your return by 25%. Send more than one end of your communication. If you don't coordinate your email, social media, and direct mail, you're missing the opportunity for them to see all the connection. Use the same language, the same theme, the same graphics, the same goal. Make it connected. Lastly, you don't send a thank you note, particularly a warm thank you note. Don't send a form letter that says, on behalf of the church, this was pretty good. Said, look, as your pastor, as your worship leader, as whoever is helping you do these notes, it personally struck me. I am grateful. You are helping people, and we are most appreciative. So I'm trying to get through these year-end giving techniques. Obviously, there's a lot more that we could discuss, but we want to honor your time. Any questions you might have, I suggest you feel free to reach out to any of the 3 of us. You should know us all, Bob or Chris or myself. Our email addresses are on the screen. You can certainly call the foundation office. We'll be glad to talk to you about these topics in more detail. We'll be glad to talk to your donors in more detail. Let us help you. Let us also remind you that we have another webinar. The next one is in just about a week. It's online communications for churches, making an impact in the digital world. Obviously, we're all depending on this digital world a lot more than we used to. Most of us were caught unprepared for it. So when you reach out, you're trying to contact people, you're trying to engage them in your message, in your ministry. What does that mean? And how in the world do I measure whether or not I'm being successful? What are just the basics? The Twitters or the tweets. Kelly laughs at me every time I use that. But what are the basics of social media? How about just common mistakes that you inadvertently stumble upon? The gentleman leading this has his own firm, has for several years, worked with churches all over the country, and he's going to be with us on Thursday, October the 22nd at 2 p.m. Like this one, there's no cost, but your registration is required. So now let me thank you for joining us and help others. Thanks.